Okay, we're going to talk today about Parshas Zachor and an incredible lesson that I learned today reading an article from the Jewish press that I really want to share with everybody about a lesson that Parshas Zachor teaches us about conversion to Judaism. This is an article that I read from Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cardoza, a Sephardic rabbi, a Spanish Sephardic rabbi. I believe he lives in Israel. Maybe he's probably American. But he's from the old Spanish and Portuguese approach to Judaism. Some people find him a little controversial, but I, in a way, see him as really, in certain ways, even certain things I might disagree with him on Zionism and things like that, in many ways he's getting back to the original ways in certain things, and he's more authentic in certain things. And also I like to hear different views, but here it happens to be he was preaching to the choir when I was reading his article about the lesson that he mentioned, particularly the Rabbanut in Israel, the chief rabbinate of Israel, can learn from the story of Amalek. So what do we mean by that? And I agree with him 100%. If we read in the book of Genesis, the genealogy, it lists Amalek as one of the descendants of Jacob, descendants of Isaac, the descendants of Esau, who was the son of Isaac. And that Amalek, who is the arch nemesis of the Jewish people throughout Scripture, in many ways. All throughout the Bible we see the enemy, how there's this eternal war with Amalek that wasn't a turtle, it was just a piece of ice. There's no turtles out this time of year. And it says that Eliphaz had a concubine, Timnah, and their child was Amalek. I don't know if that's how they say in English. And so this arch nemesis of Israel was a child of Esau, so therefore was a child of Abraham and Isaac. And yet there's this commandment to have this eternal war with this archetypical enemy. Where did this come from and what happened? The commandment to remember Amalek is what we read this Shabbos, this Maftir, from the end of Parshas Kiseitse, where it says, remember what Amalek did to you, and don't forget, and you should utterly wipe out the name of Amalek, the memory of Amalek from under the heavens, and do not forget. So which is it? Are we to remember and not forget? Or are we to blot out the memory? Which is it? And so what Rabbi Cardoza suggests is as follows. And excuse me, my voice still isn't back. I really shouldn't be making a video. But it's a little bit of Mesiras Nefesh. So what he points out is as follows. We're supposed to wipe out the evil of Amalek, but we're supposed to never forget how we are essentially responsible for that evil. What does this mean? How is it? Where does this all come from? So the rabbis have a legend, a medrash, which I believe to be historically true, that this Timnah, why is her name mentioned? We don't always have the names of women mentioned in Scripture. And so what's special about Timnah? We don't have the name of Abraham's mother in Scripture. The sages tell us in the Gemara Bava Basra, it's Masla Bas Carnival. Matulaya, the daughter of Carnival. But it's not mentioned in Scripture. I don't think it's even mentioned in Chronicles, if I remember right. Usually in Divrei Yamim you have some of these names. Lot's wife, we just know her as Lot's wife. We don't have a name. How is it that we have this woman Timnah? What was so special about her that she merited to have her name mentioned in Scripture, that these others didn't have this merit? And the rabbis say that Timnah came to Abraham saying that she wanted to convert. She wanted to be one of his disciples. And Abraham kind of pushed her away. Felt that she wasn't worthy. And she approached Isaac. Isaac, he wasn't as much of an outreach professional as Abraham was. He didn't accept her. So she figured, well, I'll have some connection to Abraham's family. I'll become a concubine to Eliphaz, the son of Esau, who was the grandson of Abraham. And so her intentions were for the sake of heaven. But where she wound up wasn't the right place. I remember this, Rav Avadi Yosef, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, hearing him tell over this story. So what he essentially said was that Timnah, she went first for an Orthodox conversion to Abraham, to Isaac, and when she saw she wasn't able to get an Orthodox conversion, she went and had a Reform conversion. He said, "Gior Reformi." That's how he expressed himself. And from there came Amalek. We see this today, that there are people who are very sincere and they want to convert to Judaism, and the rabbis are like, "Oh, leave me alone, I'm here." They run after these people who are totally couldn't care less about being Jewish. People who are really like Esav, but they happen to be born Jewish, and so that's what. And so these rabbis, they run after these people. I'm not talking about people who sincerely are interested in Yiddishkeit and they come to learn the yeshiva because they want to learn and they want to be ehrlich. I'm talking about people who they don't even realize, they don't care, or they're actively opposed to Judaism. I'm not discouraging outreach to Jews who are interested in learning more about Judaism and didn't have the chance. But there are people who are anti-Jewish. They just happen to be born Jewish, and you have these rabbis. They're running after these people to try to put tefillin on them or whatever, and yet they have people knocking at their door who want to be Jewish, and they just happen not to have been born Jewish. And and those people, I don't have time for you, or I don't do conversions. What you become a Rav for? You have an obligation in a community. If you're a Rav of a shul, that's part of your job, is to be Megayer Gerim. If you don't want to do it yourself, you at least learn with people and bring them to Bezdin, which I think is really a halbut sorah. It's not really the right thing to do, but if someone really is not interested in Geirus, and especially they're in a community where they're the only Rav, they really have no business being a Rav in a certain sense. I don't mean that every rabbi who has a title rabbi has to be involved in Geirus, but if you're a Rav of a shul, especially in a small town where you're probably the only Orthodox rabbi, For sure, for sure. You have an obligation. Instead, people say, "Oh, you can't convert here. You have to go move to New York, and if you live in Borough Park or you live in Monsey, then you can convert." Narishkeit. Show me where it says in Shulchan Aruch, do you have to live in Borough Park to be a ger? You know, do you have to go move to Monsey? In Borough Park, they usually tell ger in Monsey for some reason, and Monsey is not a place where I would send people to be gerim. A lot of gerim, they left Monsey. They were smart enough to go move to Scranton or somewhere else. But putting that aside, what happens often is a lot of these people who sincerely want to be gerim, they want to convert to Judaism. And I mean ger tzedek, not this neo-ger toshav movement or whatever it is. People throwing bones to people who want to be fully Jewish. Yeah, if you don't want to be Jewish, okay, you could be a ger toshav, you could be a ben noach. But most people who come to these movements, they come there because they really want to be Jewish, and then the rabbis are like, "Oh, you know, you don't have to stuff. You can." But that's at least better than turning people away altogether. In any event, this is where Amalek came from, and it happens to this very day that people become anti-Semites because of how lousy rabbis treat them. I don't mean the rabbis are lousy, but the way that the rabbis are treated, they could be very good rabbis. I think a lot of it is an ideology that mostly came from Rabbi Kook. You didn't have such a thing before Rabbi Kook. It's Rabbi Kook who really pushed this idea that that if someone is really sincere about conversion, they'll move to Israel or something, some nonsense like that. And so he discouraged conversion outside of the Holy Land, which is silly and empty and has no source in halacha. But how do we rectify this? I mean, Purim was really a rectification in many ways of this original, quote-unquote, original sin that brought about Amalek. And it says by Purim, that after the whole story of Purim, that many of the people of the land became Jews. In the simple reading, and that also we can show that biblically speaking, it is possible for a non-Jew to become a Jew, because the Bible specifically says, and many of the people of the land became Jews. And so we have all of this. These are the things that we have to keep in mind, but especially to be welcoming and to accept people who sincerely want to be Jewish, instead of giving them a hard time and breaking their head. When you do that, you produce anti-Semites. But there is hope, because even Amalek can become Jewish. It says that even Haman's great-grandchildren taught Torah in Bnei Brak. Some say that Rabbi Akiva himself was an anakel of Haman, because Rabbi Akiva, he lived in Bnei Brak. I don't know if it's the same Bnei Brak today. Could be, but the place where Rabbi Akiva taught Torah was Bnei Brak, and that's and so it could be that Rabbi Akiva, if it wasn't Rabbi Akiva himself, one of his students, someone from his Chatzer, someone from his yeshiva, was from Haman's grandchildren, from Haman's grandchildren. So it's a big deal. We have to be welcoming. We have to be accepting. this whole idea of pushing away gerim who are sincere is not Toradic. The only thing that the halacha says is that when someone comes to become a ger, you ask them why. You see that their meaning is sincere, and you tell them that it's what they're accepting upon themselves. That's a big responsibility. But then the Shulchan Aruch is, and the same the Rambam and the Gemara says, but you don't discourage them because they might go back. We don't want them to go back. We just want them to know what they're getting into. And rabbis have this whole wrong idea, and it really comes from a Zionist racist ideology. And that's where I disagree with Rabbi Cardoza, and that's why I'm pointing out to him it's the Rabbanut who turns away Gerim a lot. You don't see Satmar turning away Gerim so much. You see the Ehrliche people are Makabel Gerim. So of course the answer is, of course, if someone is going to go to Satmar to be a ger, it means they want to be frum, So that's why it's easier to be a ger in Satmar than to be a ger in a modern place, because you might think someone's going to go to a modern rabbi, they don't want to really be so frum. Even that said, there's halachic issues to discuss both sides of that. It's not so simple the way people learn it. But the point is, when we say wipe out the memory of Amalek, and don't forget, meaning, what does it mean don't forget? Don't forget how we got here. The reason we got here is because we weren't welcoming enough. And we created problems doing that. And we should be welcoming to everybody. We should also be welcoming to Jews who are not frum. I'm not saying not to be welcoming. We should be very welcoming, of course, to Jews. But the Jew who's not frum, I think, has more to prove than the non-Jew who wants to convert. Because there's so many problems from the secular Jewish world and so many bad influences. Usually the ger is going to be ehrlich and frum and is going to be a good Jew. And he's not going to think I'm no better than the rabbi. So I think the cautious nature that people have about gerim, and I say this is about tshuva, someone who's born Jewish. We should be more careful about the Jews. But that being so, we should just be welcoming and welcome everybody. We don't live in an environment like in the old days where it was dangerous to make gerim. That's one of the main reasons why it was so rare to have gerim in the old days, was because sometimes you needed a license from the government to make a ger. You know that? Do you know the story of the Chassam Sofer? There was someone who came to the Chassam Sofer, he wanted to be a ger, and he needed a full bris milah. So the moil, so the Chassam Sofer was overseeing the bris. And the law would have been, if they would have made the gerus, they needed a license from the government. And he said he didn't want to go get the license. He knew they wouldn't give it. So they made the gerus without the license from the government. And as he was making the bris milah, the bleeding wouldn't stop. So Chassam Sofer said, we have no choice. Both of you are going to have to go and commit suicide. Go jump in the river and commit suicide. Both the moil, who did the bris, made the circumcision, and the ger, and the convert, who's being circumcised. Because otherwise, you're going to make problems for the whole community, and we could all be in trouble, and we could all get killed. So the two of you existing are like, you have a din of a raidif, you have a din of someone who's pursuing someone else, so you have no choice but to commit suicide. So they went to the river and they're about to commit suicide. And an old man came up to them and said, what are you doing? And they said, leave us alone. He said, no, tell me what's going on. So he told him, he said, oh, I'm an expert moil, and I have this powder that stops bleeding. Put it on. It stopped the bleeding, and they didn't commit suicide. And it turned out, of course, that the old man who came by was Eliyahu Hanavi. And in order to bring Eliyahu Hanavi, they had to show Mesiras Nefesh that they were willing to sacrifice their lives for the sake of the community. But we see some Sefer, he didn't say, well, it's against the law, I need to get a license. No, he made the gerus right away. He didn't say, oh, it's going to take 2-3 years to learn. No, made him a ger, and that was it. And we have a lot of very good gerim in the world. And they're good, and they're ehrlich, and they're frum, and they're wonderful people. And this is what we need. And if we push them away too much, we're going to wind up with a Malek. And not only that, but I'll be honest with you. You want to bring Jews back. A lot of people want to be in Kiruv and make Jews more frum, right? Or make Jews frum to begin with. When you go in a college campus, and you go around asking people, are you Jewish, are you Jewish, are you Jewish? And the person is Jewish. And he's probably pretty liberal. How do you think it makes him feel when he hears you say, are you Jewish, are you Jewish? It makes him think, well, you must be a racist. You only care about me if I'm Jewish. You don't care for me if I'm not Jewish. So this is not a religion I'm interested in. So even to make Jews Jewish, to bring Jews back to Judaism, this racist ideology that really comes from Zionism, comes from Rav Kook, this is what is making Jews get turned off from Judaism. Because think about who Jews are today. Most of the Jews you meet on a college campus are going to be pretty liberal. And you go tell them something like, oh, are you Jewish, are you Jewish, are you Jewish? It's going to turn them off. So that's what I have to say for Parshas Zachor. What it means, don't forget. To remember and don't forget. That's what it means. All right, God bless you. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry I can't talk anymore. And I have to make the Daf Yomi still. I don't know how I'm going to have koyach. I'm going to push myself. I think I'll do it. All right, all the best. Thank you. All right.